Welcome back to Fantasy Football Today. Breaking news here to FFT and CBS Sports HQ. The Vikings, wow, they're making a big push. The 6-1 Minnesota Vikings are acquiring TJ Hockenson. They're also getting a 2023 fourth-round pick and a 2024 conditional fourth-round pick in exchange for a 2023 second-round pick and a 2024 fourth-round pick going back to the Detroit Lions. Huge move as the NFL trade deadline is 4 p.m. Eastern today, and this is the first big trade that we have on Tuesday. Lots of other trades have already happened, Chris McCaffrey being among them, but TJ Hockenson going in the division from the Lions to the Vikings, and Minnesota making a huge push to add to their offense. Let's break it down here now on Fantasy Football Today. I'm Jamie Eisenberg, that's Dave Richard, that's Heath Cummings. So, Dave, just talk about the offense for Minnesota right now, looking at what they have. Irv Smith is going to be out for multiple weeks with the high ankle sprain, so they're replacing their tight end, who's been a good player for them, but he doesn't have the upside of what TJ Hockenson has. You have Justin Jefferson, you have Adam Thielen, KJ Osborne, Dalvin Cook. It's all on Kirk Cousins now. Can he make this all work? Can Kevin O'Connell's system work for all of these guys to be fed and be fed happily?
It almost looks like a fantasy team. It's kind of cool how it's coming down. And you forgot to mention the offensive line for the Vikings, which has also been pretty good. This is an offense that's looking like they're going to compete for that NFC crown this year. And yes, I would say that this is great for Kirk Cousins. It's going to make it much harder for defenses to pick their poison, especially in the red zone. That's where I think you'll see TJ Hockenson matter the most. And that's an area where he didn't necessarily matter as much in Detroit, partially because Amon-Ra St. Brown stepped up. He was a great red zone threat last year and this season. Partially because the Lions love to run the ball when they get close to the goal line. Jamal Williams did that twice last week. Of course, the Vikings running backs also did it twice last week, but now they've got this other option, and it makes me wonder if Irv Smith might be left on the shelf for the rest of the year. Hockenson steps into a big-time role. Clearly, the Lions did not want to pay him that fifth-year option after all. That's going to be the Vikings' problem now. I think TJ Hockenson will probably settle in as a low-end starting fantasy tight end, which is what he was in Detroit, but now he's got a better offense. It's just the question of how many targets he will get from game to game because of everybody else that's there in Minnesota.
Heath, we see the graphic that he's averaging 12.2 PPR points per game. A lot of that is inflated from the one game that he played without Amon-Ra St. Brown, with DJ Chark banged up, with Josh Reynolds being really the de facto #1 guy. It was against Seattle, and that's been a very favorable matchup. Scored 39 fantasy points in that game. For the rest of the season, though, he's been largely disappointing. I don't see how this changes his fantasy value, per se, because he's going to a very crowded offense. So Dave says low end #1, which is basically what he's been. I kind of feel the same way. Where do you come out on TJ Hockenson as a fantasy option?
Yeah, I think he's a low-end #1. I can see a path to where that changes, and that path is that this is a terrible trade for KJ Osborne and maybe a little bit of bad news for Adam Thielen. If they want to start using TJ Hockenson in the red zone more, then maybe he takes over some of those red zone targets. Maybe Osborne now only sees 3 or 4 targets per game. Maybe they feature Hockenson as a part of their offense. That's not what I'm expecting. I would expect him to be more of a low-end #1 option, like Dave said, but there is a path towards this being a big deal. They didn't just give up a second-round pick. If they want to feature TJ Hockenson as the second option behind Justin Jefferson or as a 2B with Adam Thielen, then he could get a little boost.
Where are we at with Detroit now, Dave? Because Amon-Ra St. Brown's been their guy. DJ Chark is not going to play. Jameson Williams, we don't know when he's going to make his debut, and Josh Reynolds has been on and off the injury report. You said it. They love running the ball, and they're having a lot of success running the ball. Now Hockenson, again, the numbers are very inflated. He had a 39-point game against the Seahawks. It was just an absolute dominant performance. So are they missing much? Does this change a lot of things for this Detroit offense? And is there a tight end you can speak of that might step up in his place?
Okay, so I think if Brock Wright is healthy, he will be there. He is not the beast incarnate, but he is somebody who could be a bye-week replacement at tight end. James Mitchell would be behind him, but forget about those tight ends. You're not going to feel good starting them unless it's a deep tight end premium league. I think everything's going to flow through the running backs and Amon-Ra St. Brown. I think St. Brown's going to continue to see a ton of targets. He's an excellent buy low candidate right now in fantasy because he was beat up, and then when he came back, he didn't have huge fantasy points. Those fantasy points will come, especially now that Hockenson is off the field, and those 5-6 targets that Hockenson would get, a lot of them are going to go to St. Brown.
All right, so lots to talk about here with the TJ Hockenson trade. You can check out our Fantasy Football Today podcast for a more in-depth breakdown of it if you didn't get enough here on CBS Sports HQ. Check out our Fantasy Football Today podcast wherever podcasts are found.
Do you want a sports network that delivers everything that matters about the game? The highlights, the picks, the instant analysis, no yelling, no fake debates, no politics. Hit the subscribe button and never miss a moment.